My cousins just inherited $6.5 million and were laughing at my ripped jeans when I opened Grandma's closet. What I found inside made them stop laughing instantly. A single photo changed everything, and now they're begging me not to tell anyone the secret Grandma kept for 40 years. If you want to know how a pair of old jeans gave me the power to destroy an entire family, stay until the end because this revenge was epic. Subscribe to the channel because you won't believe what happened. But before I continue telling my story and how it all happened, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to hear where you're from. My name is Lucas, and today I'm going to tell you how I discovered my entire family had been lying to me for 25 years. It all started on the day of my grandmother Helena's funeral, the woman who raised me after my parents died in an accident when I was just 8 years old. She was everything to me, but apparently, I was nothing to the rest of the family. As I cried in the cemetery in my torn dress pants, the only ones I owned, my cousins Ricardo and Amanda, were already calculating how much money it would receive. Grandma had left her house, valued at $6.5 million, to the two of them. To me, who lived with her until I was 18 and cared for her in the last months of her life, she left only her old clothes. Ricardo wasted no time in humiliating me. Look, the poor thing couldn't even buy new pants for the funeral of the grandmother who raised him, he said, laughing. Amanda added, at least now you'll have Grandma's clothes to wear, right, Lucas? They'll suit your homeless style. I swallowed my tears and anger. I'd always been the poor cousin, the orphan who depended on family charity. But that day, something inside me changed. I didn't know it yet, but Grandma had left me much more than old clothes. She had left me the truth. 3 days after the funeral, we all gathered at lawyer Dr. Mendes's office for the official reading of the will. Ricardo arrived in a new BMW purchased with money he hadn't even received yet. Amanda arrived all dressed up, already planning how she would spend the inheritance. I arrived by bus, still wearing the same ripped jeans because they were the only formal ones I owned. I worked as an office assistant and earned $1,200 a month. It was barely enough to pay the rent on my one-bedroom apartment in the suburbs. Gentlemen, Dr. Mendes began. Helena Rodriguez left her last wishes very clear. He opened the sealed envelope and began reading. To my grandchildren Ricardo and Amanda, I leave the property located on Rua das Palmeiras, valued at $6.5 million. Ricardo and Amanda exchanged victorious smiles. I tried not to show the pain I felt in my chest. Even though I knew I wouldn't receive anything of value, it hurt to hear it officially. To my grandson Lucas, the lawyer continued, I leave the entire contents of my wardrobe and personal trunk, including all the clothes, documents, and personal effects stored therein. Amanda laughed out loud. Old clothes to match the ripped ones he already wears, Ricardo added. At least he'll have variety in his homeless wardrobe. Dr. Mendes gave them a reprimanding look, but continued. There's also a personal letter for Lucas, which should be delivered only to him. The lawyer handed me a sealed envelope with my name handwritten on it by Grandma. I put the letter in my pocket without opening it. I didn't want to give my cousins the pleasure of seeing me cry reading Grandma's last words. They had already humiliated me enough. We left the office and Ricardo offered me a ride, but only to continue teasing me. Relax, cousin. When we sell the house, we'll give you some change to buy some new pants. Amanda laughed so hard she almost choked. The next day, I went to Grandma's house to collect my inheritance. The house was empty and cold. Ricardo and Amanda had already taken everything of value: televisions, jewelry, antique furniture. Only the heavy furniture and the wardrobe from Grandma's room remained. I opened the doors of the enormous solid wood wardrobe. It was filled with antique dresses, worn shoes, and dusty boxes. At the back was a wooden chest locked with a small padlock. I picked up the letter the lawyer had given me and finally opened it. Grandma's shaky handwriting read, My dear Lucas, if you're reading this, it's because I'm gone. I've always loved you like a son, and I know you truly loved me, not for my money. In the trunk you'll find the key to discovering who your cousins really are. The secret drawer in my nightstand holds the truth about our family. Use this information wisely. With eternal love, Grandma Helena. My heart raced. Secret drawer. I rummaged through Grandma's old nightstand and found a small hidden compartment in the back. Inside was a small, golden key. The key opened the trunk's lock perfectly. Inside were dozens of documents, old photos, and correspondence. I grabbed the first envelope and nearly fainted when I saw the inscription. Birth certificate, Ricardo Mendez Silva, father, unknown. I continued shuffling through the papers, my hands shaking. There were DNA tests, altered birth certificates, blackmail letters, and even receipts for suspicious payments. Grandma had kept proof that Ricardo and Amanda were not her biological grandchildren. But that was just the beginning. What I found at the bottom of the trunk completely shattered my world. At the bottom of the trunk, inside an envelope yellowed with age, I found a photo that made my blood run cold. It was a picture of my mother, still young, holding a baby. On the back was written, Maria Ann Lucas -1998, my true family. My hands were shaking so much I almost dropped the photo. There were more photos there, my pregnant mother, my parents getting married, me taking my first steps. But what shocked me most was a letter written by my own mother. Mom, the letter said, I know you always wanted me to marry rich, but I married for love. John may not have money, but he's a good man and will be a wonderful father. I hope you accept our choice and love our son Lucas as much as I do. I kept reading and discovered that my parents didn't die in an accident like I'd always been told. They died trying to return from a trip to reconcile with Grandma, who had cut ties with my mother because she married my poor father. Grandma blamed herself for their deaths and raised me, but she could never tell me the truth. Ricardo and Amanda are the children of distant cousins whom Grandma legally adopted as children after their parents abandoned them. But there was more, much more. Among the documents, I found contracts for a company my father had founded before his death. A technology company now worth over $50 million, registered in my name as the direct heir. My poor dad was actually a brilliant businessman who was just starting out when he died. Grandma hid this from me all these years out of shame for rejecting my mother. I continued digging through the documents and found something even more shocking. Ricardo and Amanda weren't just adopted children, they'd been blackmailing Grandma for years. There were letters threatening to tell the whole town about the family's past if she didn't give them regular money. There were also receipts for transfers of $5,000 a month for each of them since they turned 18. Grandma paid them to keep secret how my parents really died and how she rejected my mother. They knew she felt guilty and exploited that guilt. But what angered me most was discovering they knew about my father's company. There were documents proving that Ricardo had tried to impersonate me several times to try to take control of the company. He even forged my signature on documents. Grandma discovered the fraud attempts and changed her will in her last week. The $6.5 million house she left them was actually a massive debt. The property was mortgaged up to its neck to pay the lawyers who were trying to stop Ricardo from stealing my inheritance. I also read letters where Amanda confessed to Grandma that they laughed at me behind my back, called me a stupid orphan, and made baits about when I would discover I was rich and they were the real poor ones in the family. Grandma had discovered everything and planned her silent revenge. She left them a house worth $6.5 million, but with $8 million in debt. In other words, they would inherit a $2.5 million debt. Meanwhile, I inherited a company worth over $50 million and generating $200,000 in profit per month. The next day, I went to the lawyer's office with all the documents I found. Dr. Mendez turned pale when he saw the papers. Lucas, he said, his voice breaking, your grandmother made me promise not to reveal this unless you brought these specific documents. She wanted to make sure you discovered the truth on your own. He opened a thick file on his desk. Your father, Joe Silva, founded Technofuture in 1997. When he died, the company was just taking off. Your grandmother, as legal guardian, has run the company on your behalf all these years. My heart almost stopped. How did you manage? She hired the best executives, reinvested all the profits, and transformed her father's small company into a technology empire. Today, Technofuture is a leader in developing educational applications and is worth exactly $52.3 million. Dr. Mendez showed me financial reports, balance sheets, and bank statements. The company had grown 500% in the last 5 years. I was officially a multimillionaire and didn't even know it. Why didn't she ever tell me? I asked, still in shock. She wanted you to grow up humble and hardworking like your father. She said that if you knew about the money too young, you might become arrogant like your adopted cousins. She would only reveal everything when you turned 25 or when she died. I had just turned 25 the week of the funeral. Grandma had planned everything down to the last detail. What about my cousins? Do they know anything? Dr. Mendez shook his head. They tried to find out for years, but your grandmother guarded the information tooth and nail. By the way, regarding their inheritance, double quotes, he showed me other documents. The house they inherited has an $8 million mortgage. They'll have to pay $2.5 million in debt. I left the lawyer's office with a folder full of documents and a plan forming in my head. My cousins had humiliated me my entire life, mocked my poverty, and exploited Grandma's guilt. Now it was my turn. First, I called Technofuture's HR department and scheduled a meeting. When I got there, still with my ripped pants, the doorman almost refused to let me in. I have a meeting with the board, I insisted. The president's secretary looked me up and down with disdain. Excuse me, but Mr. Marcus is in an important meeting. Do you have an appointment? I showed my ID and documents. I'm Lucas Silva, the founder's son and the new owner of the company. Her expression changed completely. Within 5 minutes, she was being greeted by President Marcus Thompson, a 50-year-old man who had been my father's partner. Lucas, he said with tears in his eyes, you look just like Joe. Your grandmother made me promise to take care of the company until you were ready to take over. She talked about you every day. Marcus showed me photos of my father in the office, awards the company had won, and even a room named after him. Your father was a visionary. He created the country's first interactive educational app. Today, we have contracts with over 200 schools. For 3 hours, Marcus explained how the company worked, showed me the monthly profits, and introduced me to the employees. It was surreal to discover that I owned it all. Can I ask you a personal question? Marcus finally asked, why are you dressed like that? Your grandmother always said you were too proud to accept financial help from her. I told him everything that had happened, my cousins humiliating me, the inheritance of the old clothes, the discovery of the documents. Marcus was outraged. How about we teach those cousins of yours a lesson? He suggested with a mischievous smile. 2 days later, Ricardo called me ecstatic. Cousin, you won't believe it. A beer has shown up for Grandma's house. A wealthy businessman who wants to pay $7 million upfront. I feigned surprise. Wow, how lucky you guys are. Yeah, right, we're going to be millionaires. By the way, remember I promised to give you some change to buy new clothes. How about $500? $500. The man who was about to inherit millions offered me $500 as if it were a gigantic favor. Maybe, I reply. Where will we meet? Come over to my house tomorrow at 2 p.m. We'll sign the sales papers and then we'll celebrate. Bring your new clothes from Grandma so we can have a laugh. I hung up the phone smiling. The beer of the house was Marcus, my partner. He had offered $7 million, knowing the house was owed $8 million. Technically, he was buying the debts together. I spent the next morning shopping. I bought 3 designer suits, Italian shoes, a Rolex watch, and even a new car, a Mercedes convertible. I spent $50,000 in 2 hours, and it barely made a dent in my bank balance. But for the meeting with my cousins, I purposely wore Grandma's old clothes, yellow dress pants, a striped shirt from the 1980s, and worn-out shoes. I wanted them to see me, as they always had up until the moment of the big reveal. I arrived at Ricardo's house promptly at 2 p.m. Amanda was there too, already celebrating with expensive champagne. Look at our cousin, Ricardo shouted when he saw me. At least Grandma's clothes fit you. You look like a vintage scarecrow. Amanda laughed so hard she spat champagne. Grandma had terrible taste in clothes, didn't she? It suits you perfectly. I smiled calmly and pulled an envelope from my pocket. Before we talk about selling the house, I need to show you something. I opened the envelope and placed the photos on the table. The forged birth certificates, the blackmail receipts, the documents from my father's company. Their laughter died instantly. Ricardo went white as a sheet. Amanda dropped her champagne glass on the floor. Grandma left me more than just old clothes, I said calmly. She left me the truth about who you really are. I showed her the Technofuture document. And she also left me my father's company, which is worth $52 million. Ricardo tried to speak, but only incomprehensible sounds came out. Amanda began to cry. Oh, and about the house you're selling, I continued. It has an $8 million mortgage. You'll owe $2.5 million after the sale. Grandma planned it all. I got up from my chair and adjusted my yellowed grandma pants. Thank you for the years of humiliation. You taught me to appreciate the simple things in life. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have a multi-million-dollar company to run. I left the house, leaving them both in a complete panic. Grandma's revenge had been perfect, and I finally understood why she always said, "Lucas, appearances can be deceiving." One day you'll understand that the real treasure is hidden where no one expects it. If you enjoyed this story of family revenge, please like, subscribe to the channel, and activate the bell. And tell me in the comments, do you think I was too cruel to my cousins, or did they deserve it? See you in the next video.